Hey everybody, it's James here from NeuralNet Games and welcome to my Mindthief Ultimate Build Path Beginner Guide. This is a guide on how to play the Mindthief and I'm going to go card by card, level by level and show you exactly which cards to take and also which cards to remove so that you've got a nice powerful template to go by. And also, I make a couple controversial or maybe non-standard picks in this guide compared to what I've seen out there, and I am going to go in depth when I do that. So level 3, watch out for level 3. It's gonna get a little bit crazy. It's gonna be fun. So what this guide is not, is it's not an advanced min-maxed guide. So I think sometimes sacrifices have to be made in the name of flexibility and utility, because to play a theoretical, optimal way sometimes doesn't really work unless you're extremely skilled and you've played the game for hundreds or thousands of hours and you really have a perfect understanding of what to do. You know what all the monster cards are going to do, like all of their action cards, right? You know their behaviors, level designs, stuff like that. And so I've just made a couple picks here that skew a little bit more towards flexibility and utility versus this kind of, magical, theoretical, optimal that I see some people talking about. So yeah, not going to include items in this, not going to include enhancements. It's going to be a nice beginner guide. It's still a very powerful build and it's going to take you all the way from level 1 to level 9. You'll be able to beat content on the highest difficulty, so don't think it's underpowered or anything, but there's just a couple of reasons why I've changed some card picks. Okay, oh yes, also, I have another series. It's the Ultimate Guide series. I've done every single class already. It's more of like a general overview on how classes play with some card picks. I'll put a link down in the description. Make sure you go ahead and check that out as well. And let's get started. Let's go to level 1, level X card picks. The first card we're going to take is Into the Night. The top loot is nice, and the bottom invis, though, is really why we're doing it, and the 14 initiative is also good. Don't forget, you can use it with the top of Scurry to move into position, attack, and then go invisible. And don't forget, if you go really early one time and go invisible, you can get 2 turns of invisibility by then going late on your next turn. So early invisible, next turn late, you come out of invisibility when it's your turn. And so that's a really good way of maximizing invisibility. There are levels, especially in Gloomhaven Digital, where Into the Night is, pretty much essential. And in a lot of situations, it can get you out of a lot of trouble. When you play the Mindthief, you really want to make sure you're avoiding being hit. And there's a bunch of strategies to do that. We'll talk about that. Once I get through the card picks, I'm going to go through actual strategy for the class just based upon which cards, we're using. But you want to make sure you're darting in and out and making yourself hard to hit. Into the Night is great for that. Really good level 1 card. The next card we're going to take at level 1 is Gnawing Horde. And this card, it's not really that good, but it serves a purpose. And we're actually going to hold on to it for a while because of this purpose. We need the 4 move on the bottom. We need the late initiative. We don't need the rat. The rat, except at the very lowest levels, is just not very good. It's going to take a hit or 2 max. It doesn't do enough damage. It's a melee summon, and you don't have enough ways of controlling the summon to make it actually great. So take this card, but we're taking it for the move and the late initiative. The next card we're taking is a big surprise. It's the Mind's Weakness. The best card the Mindthief has. The literal best card overall. Even better than level 9. So why is it so good? Well, at level 1, this card is almost doubling your damage. It's basically doubling your damage. So if I said to you, like in a video game, hey, do you want to take one singular thing that gives you 100% damage boost? Usually that's going to be really good, and in this case, it is too. Pretty much never played for the bottom, although the bottom is actually good, a bottom attack with the Mindthief. The problem is when you play bottom attacks, you want to have the Mind's Weakness in play, and you can't really do that. So the bottom attack is fine, but we're playing it for the top basically 100% of the time. Try and play it as early as you can. Sometimes in Gloomhaven you get rushed in the first room, you can't play it first turn, but make sure you're playing it by the second turn at least. The next card we're taking is Submissive Affliction, and Submissive Affliction top, pretty good. It does, usually you can stun, immobilize, etc. And so, having an extra condition or two and you have the Mind's Weakness out is good for 5 or 6 damage repeatable. And just remember, if you're using something like a Poison Dagger, you don't get the bonus from the poison because it applies on the attack. The conditions have to be before the attack. The initiative, not super great at 48. That's an understatement. It's awful. And then the bottom is actually better than it looks. 1, crazy range. 2, it's on the bottom, so you can combine it with a top ranged attack to do some burst damage. 3, it scales decently well because what happens is you force a monster to attack. So anything that's on the monster stat card applies to this attack. It'll always be a 2 damage attack, but if the monster has wound, they'll wound their friends. If the monster has poison or curse, they'll poison or curse their friends. And so it scales okay, and because it's on the bottom and because it's so flexible with its 5 range and its ability to grant like an archer, if you put this on an archer, use it on an archer, the archer shoots at regular range. So there's a lot of flexibility there. Quite a good card overall. And I just wanted to let you know I've started a Patreon. I'm going to have all kinds of cool exclusive benefits on there, like come and play games with me on Tabletop Simulator, and I'm going to have all these recorded campaign plays of games that I play unedited live. It's going to be really fun, and they won't be posted anywhere else. So if you're looking for a way to support the channel, that's definitely the way to do it. And also, I have started a Twitter account too. Come and follow me. I've got I'm doing tons of fun stuff. I'm just getting ramped up, and I'm gonna have board game news, and I'm gonna post stuff that makes me laugh. I've got a really funny KDM pick I took for my gaming session the other night. I'm gonna throw that up on there, and I'm just gonna have a good time with it. So make sure you follow me on Twitter. I've got links to both of those things down in the pinned comment, and let's get on to the next card. The next card we're taking is Scurry. And this is a card that I think I keep longer than most people do, just because of what I was talking about before, where I'm talking about actual flexibility and utility versus theoretical optimum plays from someone who knows the game extremely well, right? So lots of times you don't always know exactly what's going to happen when you're playing Gloomhaven. Even, 100 plus hours in, I still didn't always know what was going to happen. And sometimes I would pick cards and just go, well, let's see what happens essentially, right? Because sometimes, you get 6 or 8 monsters, all your friends are going. It's pretty hard to perfectly piece together that puzzle ahead of time. As it unfolds, it becomes clearer and clearer. And I can't tell you how many times I had a plan, especially in the beginning, and even still sometimes now, even though I, literally have a YouTube channel on the game with 85 or 90 videos on it. Even now, I sometimes make mistakes and misread what a monster's going to do and then go, oh, right, that guy's actually going to target him, he's faster, or something along those lines. I'm going on and on, but Scurry is one of these cards that has so much utility. You're going to love it almost every time because it's going to allow you to play the bottom of cards like Perverse Edge and get into position, stun with Perverse Edge, move in and attack, or it's going to allow you to move with Into the Night bottom. It's going to do so many good things for you. And so when you're thinking like, it's so weak, it's only 1 attack, yeah, that's true, but it is going to allow you to be more functional, more flexible, and probably more effective in the long run unless you're like an extremely advanced player. I mean, it's a very good card. That's all I'm really going to say. It does something on the bottom too. It's just a good card overall. The next card we're taking with us is Perverse Edge, and it does have a top, I promise you, although most people have hardly used it for the top. Anyways, the top is actually decent. If you've got 2 conditions on somebody and the Mind's Weakness, that's a loss of 9 at level 1. That's pretty powerful early on. Now, they've got to have 2 conditions on them, but still, it can be pretty good damage. And then the bottom is just amazing. I use it so much to crowd control. It allows you to stay in the pocket. You know, you're up next to a tough monster. You stun one, you kill the other. Or you stun the one that you're attacking even though you're at disadvantage. A bottom range stun that empowers ice and gives you experience. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that overall. This is another card that just has so much utility. If you are one of my patrons and you watch some of my campaign plays, you will see me abuse this card over and over and over again. The next card we're taking is Empathetic Assault. Top is just a good, strong, super flexible attack. I mean, it's not super strong attack damage wise, but when you add in the disarm, it does quite a bit for you. So use it for that quite a bit. It does empower ice, you know, for Frigid Apparition sometimes when we need it. If we've already, you know, if we don't have Perverse Edge, like we've had to throw it away on a short rest or something because we got unlucky. And then the bottom is just nice, solid flexibility. Generally, you shouldn't get hit a lot as the Mindthief. We'll talk about that later in the strategy section, but the Mindthief should be using movement of in and out and late initiative and early initiative and then things like invisibility to basically not get hit because, I mean, you're, you know, like a mage hit point pool and you're a melee damage dealer. So taking hits is not really something you want to do very often. The next card we're taking is Frigid Apparition, and this is a great card. With the Mind's Weakness, you're attacking for 5, and then you're stunning by consuming ice. You have so much access to ice. It's ridiculous. Even at level 1 with Perverse Edge, you're just making ice every turn you follow this up. And like I said before, I've got campaign plays on my Patreon, and I play 2-player, and I've been using the Mindthief recently at early levels, at level 1. And like in 2-player, you can just lock monsters down with the Mindthief. Like it's really quite fun actually, and very effective. Good crowd control. Like Mindthief has some of the best early crowd control. The bottom of this, it's like one of those emergency moves where you're like, well, if I don't stun this monster, he's going to, you know, kill somebody or do ridiculous things that will cause us to lose the scenario. So you're going to use it very late when you do use it, or maybe as some sort of emergency move to get somewhere. Most often, you're going to keep this around for as long as you can to play the top. The next card we're taking is Feedback Loop. Pretty good card overall. The bottom move is nice. Move 4, jump, reusable, and muddling. It can be really very handy. Actually, it's a great level 1 move. It's one of the better, might be the best level 1 move because jump is so amazing with 4 and muddle. Anyways, really good move. Top, once in a while, you're going to go, I've got myself into trouble. I've got the Mind's Weakness out. I am going to play this card so that I can get shield and save myself from having to throw away cards. Especially if you do something like getting burned on a, you know, you're on your last 2 cards and you get hit and you actually have to mitigate damage by throwing or losing 2 of your discards. You're like, no, I don't want to have to do that. Anyways, it's a bit of a safety valve. Overall, very good card. The next card we're taking is Fearsome Blade, and the top is just really fun. You can really do some good things with Push 3. Push 3 is very effective. It's better than pulling, and pushing at 3, I mean, traps, shoving melee monsters with low movement out of range so that, you know, essentially they just travel back towards you and never get there. It's really quite good. The bottom, you're not going to use it often for the bottom. It's, you know, fairly underwhelming, but it's one of those things where, you know, you're late in a scenario, you need to get somewhere, you need to kill a monster, or it's going to be worse than, you know, losing the card. Then you go ahead and do it. Overall, the card, it's pretty good, but we're, based upon one of my controversial card picks, we're probably not going to keep it around for very long. Okay, next we've got sideboard cards. The first is going to be Withering Claw. Withering Claw is not bad, but it can't compare to the Mind's Weakness. You can do some builds around, you know, Submissive Affliction and stuff like that, where, you know, you do extra damage based upon conditions, but it's just not going to be as powerful. It isn't. The initiative is nice and late at 77. I mean, it would be better if it was in the 80s like Gnawing Horde, but it's still decently good. The bottom, and this is one thing, you could actually take Gnawing Horde out and play Withering Claw if you wanted to use it for the mobilize and the move. I prefer to go with the 4 move. Just because I think it does make a difference to us sometimes just around positioning. But this is a card you could actually swap for Gnawing Horde. But for this build, it's out. The next is Possession. The top is just, it's too situational for a 6 damage loss. Even if it was just like, you attack for 6 damage and it's a loss, it's still not great. Let alone having to have an adjacent ally do it. And then the bottom, 1 ally within range 3 may perform move 4. Yeah, whatever. Very certain scenarios it may be useful, but it's not something you're going to use a lot. I mean, unless you're the kind of guy who likes to be in a puppet master and moving all your friends around the battlefield. And they can, just to be clear, they can refuse to move. 1 ally within range 3 may perform move 4. But if you like to be the, the controller kind of guy, sometimes it can be useful and maybe it's fun for you. But overall, I pretty much never play Possession. And the last is Parasitic Influence. You shouldn't be getting hit when you play the Mindthief. And if you are going to get hit, you should be, using your shield augment. Because you only have a small hit point pool. You can't really afford to plan on losing hit points and then plan to get them back. So I just prefer to avoid damage or, mitigate it with shield. And then the force 1 enemy within range 4 to perform move 1 with you controlling the action. It's okay, it can be useful, but something like Fearsome Blade is going to be 10 times more effective in just shoving monsters into traps. And so it's not really something you're going to love a lot. At level 2, we have Wretched Creature and Hostile Takeover. And I'm taking Hostile Takeover. I am not taking Wretched Creature. Wretched Creature, the summon is just awful. I mean, it has such low hit points. It's even worse than the level 1 summon because 4 damage, it's going to get killed so easily. It's never going to live up to its potential of doing 3 damage per hit because it's going to be cut in half. It's going to be in the grave. Probably a little more detail than is necessary. The bottom move 3 curse, it's fine. I mean, adding a curse, it's just a decent flexible move, so it's okay for that. Hostile Takeover, though, is one of those cards where it's just going to be a good flexible utility card. So useful for pinning melee monsters with the immobilize so they can't attack, and it has good range too, so if you can pin them far away, even when they pull that one annoying card that has range on it from their attack deck, they still won't be able to hit you for the most part. It also empowers ice, which again is useful for us. We need more than one source of ice, really useful for us overall. A really nice combo is to use, Perverse Edge into Frigid Apparition. Then you stam Frigid Apparition back. The next turn you use Hostile Takeover, and then you Frigid Apparition again. So you've got some really good early crowd control, like a nice cycle of cards over, multiple turns where you're stunning, immobilizing, etc. And it really adds up when you do stuff like that. So it's nice to have that second source of ice so that you can get Frigid Apparition back and use it twice in a rest cycle. The initiative also at 9 is very good. The bottom, it's fine. Think of it this way. It's like a stun because it actually takes a monster's turn. It performs its turn. You don't just puppeteer it, it attacks, and then it does its regular turn. You actually take its turn over. So it's as good as stunning it, and then it's actually going to attack one of its friends. And so you've got a stun plus some damage, and, depending on whether the other monster has retaliate or whatever, it can be, pretty decent. It's definitely not going to be amazing. Just remember that on this card, it does follow the monster AI targeting rules. You don't get to decide who it actually attacks. Okay, so now we're going to take Hostile Takeover. We're going to remove Empathetic Assault. Hostile Takeover is a ranged attack like Empathetic Assault. It empowers ice like Empathetic Assault. it has similar range. It's only down on attack, and instead of disarming, it immobilizes. But Empathetic Assault, I think there's just no other cards for us to really take out that make sense. Empathetic Assault has to go. We can't get rid of Gnawing Horde because we need that for a move. We can't get rid of Into the Night because we still really need that invisibility. I mean, at early levels, you're at 6-8 hit points, right? Like, you need that invisibility to stay alive. All right, it's time for level 3. Buckle up. So, we've got Brain Leech and we've got Silent Scream. And I am taking Silent Scream. I am not taking Brain Leech. Although throughout my Gloomhaven career, I have definitely taken Brain Leech far more than I have taken Silent Scream. But in my last round of playtesting on Gloomhaven Digital and, playing here at, a couple different player counts on my table, I think Silent Scream works better for most players. And this is another part of, me talking about theoretical optimum versus having a card that is just a much easier to play and is a lot better overall if you're not playing perfectly. And it's more of a card where you can just play it and you don't have to read the entire battlefield and have every single move mapped out and understand every single little, piece of the puzzle before you actually can make a good decision. And so, Brain Leech, the attack 1 strengthen on the bottom is 95% of the reason why people take it. Because with the Mind's Weakness, it's an attack 3 with a strengthen, and then you've got strengthen for a potential top attack, right? So extra damage there, and then it lasts until the end of your next turn as well. So if you do play a top attack, you're getting, potentially 3+ attacks, depending on what cards you play, that are all strengthened. And I totally get that. That is a very valid way of playing. It does do good damage, but I don't think it works out like that as much as you think it does. And here's why. So usually for the best way of using this, you've got to be in position already, which you can be sometimes. You come out of Into the Night on late initiative and you're in position beside a monster already. You plug this in a top attack and it feels all good and you do good damage that way. But a lot of the time you need to use Scurry to get this card off without putting yourself in danger. And Scurry, I think you're using Scurry more with Perverse Edge and Into the Night. And so I think a lot of times people aren't in position as often as they would like to really maximize this card. And sometimes this card is just a move 2. And it's probably a move 2 than more often than most people think. And then the top of Brain Leech, it's pretty underwhelming. I mean, attack 4 with a heal 4, it's fine. I mean, it's got range 4, so decent flexibility, but it's underpowered, even though it does have the extra 4 heal. And so I think that it works out less often for Brain Leech than people think. So, Silent Scream. Heal 2, range 2. Very rarely am I using this card for the top, although it can be reasonably useful in the right party compositions if you've decided to play an alternate support type of build. However, the reason I take this card is the bottom. 1, we are a little bit low on move still. And that's another problem with Brain Leech, is that it's not a move. And you can get into a situation with the Mindthief where you only have like 1 or 2 cards that can move past 2, right? And so adding this card at level 3 gives us another move that's better than a move 2. So we've got a couple move 4s in this move 3. And so it's actually going to allow us to be more flexible without having a perfect read on the battlefield. And then it's an automatic push to everyone, which is so much more useful than you think. And then by, consuming ice, you get push 3. You can do some serious work with pushing 3 on everything. I mean, just scatter the battlefield. And then you can combo it with things like Hostile Takeover, scatter the melee monsters and pin the toughest elite where he is, move melee monsters out of range, shove them into traps, change line of sight, right? An archer who's just, gonna stand still and shoot. you shove them back into another room so they doesn't have line of sight on one of your friends. There's actually a lot more utility in Silent Scream bottom than most people think. So what card would we actually get rid of for Brain Leech? There's almost no candidates. If we get rid of Fearsome Blade, we have no push ability, and that 3 push is great. So if we take Silent Scream, we get push, and we can leave Fearsome Blade behind. If we take Brain Leech, we can't get rid of Fearsome Blade. And we can't get rid of any of our moves. We can't get rid of Gnawing Horde, right? Like, we have to have those moves. We can't get rid of those moves. You'll find yourself in a bad spot if you get rid of one of those moves right now for Brain Leech because you think, well, I just want to, attack more. Losing the move is going to cost you for sure. So the only card you can really take out is Submissive Affliction, but Submissive Affliction at this point is a pretty strong attack. It's consistently 5 to 6 damage, and it has that, nice, good, flexible bottom, and you're going to want that flexible bottom sometimes when you want to attack from range. So you use the bottom of Submissive Affliction at range 5, and then you use Hostile Takeover, and you can stay at range and still do 4 or 5, maybe 6 damage, maybe a little higher depending on where your modifier deck is exactly at and how lucky you get, but you've got more range. So there's really just nothing that makes sense with this current setup. And you know what? I know this goes against really what the standard is for the community, and I know some people are going to disagree with me, but I think, I've thought about this a lot. I have thought about this a ton, and I've tested it, and I just think that it's better for the majority of players at this point not to use Brain Leech for the bottom because of, all those reasons. I'm not going to reiterate. Initiative is also a bit of a problem, and let me explain. So the Mindthief needs to kind of dance in and out, needs to play low initiative cards, and needs to play high initiative cards to go slow sometimes, to maximize invisibility and, do that dance of, making sure you don't get hit by going fast and going slow sometimes. Because we actually don't want to keep Gnawing Horde around for, any longer than we have to, it's nice to have this card. Although 73 is right on the verge of going late, but still it can help us. And then also we'll have Feedback Loop, right, at 79. And so once we get rid of Gnawing Horde, we still want to have 2 decently late initiative cards, because sometimes you're going to short rest and you're going to have to nuke Feedback Loop, or, maybe vice versa, right? You want to have at least 2 late initiative cards as well. Another advantage Silent Screams has over Brain Leech is the fact that you can enhance it. You can enhance the push so that you can do a lot of work with this card. It's a very strong enhancement. It is at level 3. It is multi-target, so I believe you're at 250 gold depending. I think that would be for 250 gold for Immobilize. It's a 100 base cost for Immobilize times 2 plus 50 for level 3. Hopefully I'm recalling that correctly. I'm not looking at the moment. Anyways, it's pretty expensive, but enhancement, just another feather in the cap of Silent Scream over Brain Leech. So at level 3, we are removing Fearsome Blade, and we are adding Silent Scream. But let me know your thoughts, make sure and comment below, and thanks for sticking with me through that. I don't know how long it is, but that's pretty long. Let's get on to the next level. At level 4, we have Pilfer and we have Cranium Overload, and I'm taking Cranium Overload and I'm not taking Pilfer, even though I love Pilfer. So let's start with Pilfer top. You get loot tokens for however many monsters are adjacent. Just remember, you have to have 1 loot minimum. You can't loot if there's no tokens, so you can't just randomly get loot when monsters are around if there's no tokens on the ground. I actually love this top. People are like, oh, this top sucks. This top doesn't suck. What it is it's a card that only works in very certain party compositions, and those are parties where you've got a decent amount of damage dealers outside of yourself, and you can actually take the time to loot. Because with a card like this, you can loot a lot. I mean, you're just making extra loot. And so you can really advance, you can really speed up your ability to, buy items and enhancements by using a card like Pilfer. And so if that's something that you're really into, Pilfer can be an invaluable card in the right circumstance. For this guide, I can't recommend it because this is a beginner guide and it's not including enhancements and it's not including items. So, I mean, I just really can't recommend it. It's almost impossible based upon the theme of this guide. Anyways, the bottom, it's quite powerful with the Mind's Weakness. Attack 4, move 3, attack 4. Enough said. Cranium Overload. The card you're looking at here is a first edition. The hit point limit was removed in the second edition. So killing a normal enemy can be worth up to 22 hit points at max level, at max scenario level 7, depending on the monster. I'm pretty sure it's 22 though. No spoilers about the monster, but it can be worth a ton of damage. And then you're attacking enemies adjacent to the killed target. I mean, you can do another 2, 4, 6, 8 damage, whatever it is. And just remember that the attack 2 on this card, it is considered a ranged attack because the first part is a ranged attack. So, I mean, there's lots of potential there. 5 initiative is fantastic. Like, that's a I will go first card, unless there's a bloody scoundrel kicking around. And then move 5, tons of utility. Now we're going to have a decent amount of move cards so that when you short rest, you can afford to throw away a move card early without having to worry about it. Because one thing people don't consider, and that's why another reason I took Silent Scream, there's a lot of them over Brain Leech, is that you need to have at least a move card or 2 that you can afford to lose on your first or second short rest without completely crippling yourself. And I think a lot of players don't really think about that. So we're going to take Cranium Overload and we're going to remove Gnawing Horde. We're going to remove Gnawing Horde now because we've got enough move with this card. And that allows us to, take out Gnawing Horde, which has a useless top, and put in this great card that has better initiative, although we need late initiative, but 5 is just so amazing. You have to take it. Great move and great top. At level 5, we have Frozen Mind and we have Mass Hysteria. And I'm taking Mass Hysteria and I'm not taking Frozen Mind. And here's why. So Frozen Mind top, it is good, but it is not as good as the Mind's Weakness. One, you've got Frigid Apparition and you're keeping that, and it's going to, allow you to stun already. So that's 1 ice source gone per rest cycle, right? And so you're only going to be able to stun maybe 1 or 2 other times during a rest cycle, depending on exactly how you build and what items you have. But even if you could stun every single turn, I don't know if it would be worth it over the Mind's Weakness. In fact, I believe it wouldn't. And I don't think you can stun every turn. I don't. I mean, if you had the perfect setup, maybe you could. But other than that, you're not going to be able to. So it's just, it's not as good. It is still viable, though. And I have, played with a stun build because I think doing stuff like that is fun. This is just a beginner guide to help you kind of navigate what makes sense and what doesn't. So don't feel bad about taking anything you want and having fun with it because playing a stun build with the Mindthief is actually fun. Initiative at 81, it's nice and late. The bottom, force 1 enemy within range 5 to perform move 2 with you controlling the action. That's useful, but pushing everybody at 3 or 2 is probably going to be better on average, right? Next, we have Mass Hysteria. This top, the Mindthief's modifier deck gets pretty good, so even though this is 1 damage, it does add up after a while. So, and it's really flexible with how many targets you can hit. Now, it's not a super powerful card. It isn't. It just fulfills a role in the Mindthief. Like, it's not a great card. If you spec for it and you use a bunch of different items to buff up the attack and, you really work at making it great, you can output some pretty serious damage, but it's not super powerful, right? But it fulfills a need for us. It hits a bunch of targets at range. It empowers ice, which we want for Silent Scream and Frigid Apparition. It's got pretty good initiative at 12. And then the bottom, this is a trap. Trap alert. Having multiple augments out slows you down so much because 1, you've got to play multiple augments. 2, the longevity it takes from you can add up so fast. You want to play the Mind's Weakness, this, and another augment, you've got 3 cards in your active area. If you leave them out, and leave yourself as this effective, stunning killing machine or whatever, right? Like say you took Frozen Mind at level 6 or something and you played all of them together. Yeah, you could do some serious things for a short period of time, but you would be seriously impacting your longevity because they're going to sit in your active area and you're just going to cycle through the rest of your cards really quickly. Or the other alternative to that is you actually picking them up each rest cycle and having to replay them. The tempo is just, it's a problem. It's nowhere near as good as it looks on paper, and I would pretty much recommend you don't do that. So we're taking Mass Hysteria, we're taking it so we can play the top, and we are now removing Submissive Affliction because this card has good range, it has multi-target ability, and it's time for Submissive Affliction to go into the sideboard and probably not come back out, even though it's still a good card. At level 6, we have Dark Frenzy and Corrupting Embrace. And I'm taking Dark Frenzy. I'm not taking Corrupting Embrace. Dark Frenzy top, easy to get ice, pretty easy to get dark. We've got Into the Night, right? And we'll probably take Corrupting Embrace later, spoiler alert. Anyways, we can make dark with Into the Night right now. And that's 8 damage with the Mind's Weakness out, repeatable, and 2 experience. That adds up pretty quick. Great initiative at 10, and then the bottom is just really good. Move 3, attack 3, range 3, empower ice, and an experience. So much flexibility, so much utility there. I mean, you can just throw this card out no matter what's happening and be confident you're going to be effective. I mean, it's great for newer players. Corrupting Embrace is also very good. A little bit lower damage potential, but you can split it up to kill 2 targets, so it's pretty close to even. If you do attack the same target with both of these attacks, it's going to be 7 damage. It's going to be 3 for the first, and it's going to be 4 for the second because the poison adds +1 damage on, and then +2 from the Mind's Weakness. Initiative at 39. I mean, it is what it is. The move 4 jump on the bottom is really nice, though. It's really hard to take Dark Frenzy over it, but it'll all make sense as we go through every level. Move 4 jump, poison, target all enemies move through, and empower dark. Very, very useful. But we're going to take Dark Frenzy at level 6, and we're going to remove Hostile Takeover. I think the bottom of Dark Frenzy does, is almost as much as Hostile Takeover. And Hostile Takeover at 2 attack for a top is just running out of steam. The crowd control is still pretty nice, and you could actually leave Mass Hysteria home. Like if you're like, no, I love Hostile Takeover too much, you could make different card picks and not take Mass Hysteria. But we took Mass Hysteria. It's a ranged attack. Same range as Hostile Takeover, and it empowers ice, and so we just don't really need Hostile Takeover. We're going to take Dark Frenzy. At level 7, we have Psychic Projection, and we have Vicious Blood, and I'm taking neither. I'm sure everyone expected this, not a big surprise, but taking Corrupting Embrace. Let's talk about the cards here. Psychic Projection. This top, even if it didn't stun you, would still suck for level 7. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. I'm sorry, Isaac, you're clearly a genius, but this card it doesn't work. For whatever reason, it didn't, it isn't that good, and for whatever reason, it didn't get changed. Late initiative at 92 is fine. The bottom is pretty much useless for the most part, except with Mass Hysteria. Mass Hysteria, it's going to add, if you've got the Mind's Weakness, it's going to add +2 damage to every attack, and that can be an extra 8 damage. So it's not useless, but it's still not really super amazing either. And then Vicious Blood. The top of this, if you build solely for Vicious Blood, you can do some pretty good work. I've actually got a build I made called, I think it's called Vicious Embrace. I'll put a link down in the description. It's a specific build based upon this card. If you don't build around this, it's not useful. It's not good. The bottom is actually fairly decent. Move 2 and attack 4 if you've got the Mind's Weakness out. That's fairly good, but we're definitely going to take Corrupting Embrace because it just does so much better. Like, it's better in every way than both of these cards. It is. And what we're going to remove Feedback Loop. We don't really need the jump on Feedback Loop anymore because we've got Corrupting Embrace, which is just functionally superior. So Feedback Loop out, Corrupting Embrace in. At level 8, we have Shared Nightmare and we have Domination. And I'm taking Shared Nightmare. I'm not taking Domination. The top is just not powerful enough. Yeah, you get to grant them the effect of your augment, so your friend can attack 6 repeatable. It's fine, but it's not great for level 8. If it was a level 2 card, you'd be like, yep, hook me up. I was going to say hit me up. That didn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not appropriate for the level compared to something like Dark Frenzy, which we can just blast off with a couple elements and get experience, and it just is way easier and has a way higher damage ceiling. Initiative at 13 is good. The bottom is just a straight upgrade over Hostile Takeover, and the difference is, 1, the range is increased, 2, you get to control the action, so quite a bit better. Still, though, not going to be good enough. Dark Frenzy top, it's pretty good. It's not amazing either. I mean, attack 3, range 4, target 2, and then poison and curse with just 1 dark. And dark is pretty easy for us to get. So, I mean, it's doing fairly decent work, but nothing amazing. Great initiative, though, and it's another source of ice for us. We just make ice like it's nobody's business. And then the bottom is also, really good. It's more move. Having a decent amount of move is really good. Move 5 is great. The shield 1, because we have so much ice, we're actually going to be able to use this sometimes, although, we're mostly not going to be getting hit. Sometimes the shield will be useful, though. I mean, everything doesn't always go perfectly. So, what are we removing? This is where it gets tough. So, there are a few options here. I don't want to lock you into anything, although I won't cop out on this. I will give you a recommendation. You can remove Mass Hysteria if you aren't spec for it, because Shared Nightmare can handle multi-target attacks. So you can get rid of Mass Hysteria if you're finding it underwhelming for whatever build you are. Or you can remove Silent Scream because you don't need the move anymore because you've added this 5 move. And you can watch for the right scenario with lots of traps to put it back in or something along those lines. Or you can even remove Scurry because it's really useful, but at level 8, that 1 attack on top is getting pretty weak, and we're really only using it with Into the Night and Perverse Edge, and it still has a ton of flexibility, but that 1 damage is starting to get to the point where it's like, probably not going to be as good as most of my other top actions. So those are kind of your options. Let me know if you have any other thoughts on that. And what I would say is we're going to remove Scurry and we're going to put in Shared Nightmare. At level 9, we have Many as 1 and we have Phantasmal Killer. And I'm taking Phantasmal Killer. Probably no surprises here. Many as 1. The Rat King is not bad, but because his attack gets nerfed by taking damage, when you're at level 9, he's taking 4 or 5 plus damage first hit, and his attack is going to go down drastically very quickly. Like, you really needed maybe 12 hit points or something, probably would really be like, okay, now, if you can get him a couple attacks, right, where he's undamaged, then he takes a couple hits, then it becomes quite good and it becomes level 9 worthy. Let me know your thoughts on that one. 91, late initiative, nice and late. The bottom of this, if you have the right party, this can get wild. Like, you can add a ridiculous amount of damage if you've got allies who have summons and they've got multi-target or AoE attacks. It can get crazy. It can get crazy, though. Yeah. I've theory crafted. I've never actually had an amazing situation where I've used this, but I've thought of amazing situations where you're adding, +6, +8 damage to everyone's attacks, and, you've got allies that are attacking 3-4 times each. You do the math. Adds up pretty fast. Phantasmal Killer. Top is very good. Very good once you get to higher levels against, shielded regs and high hit point regs. Like I said, a high hit point reg can get up to about, I believe 22 is the max. So, 122, that's a lot. That's going to outperform the Mind's weakness in that particular instance, although it's not going to outperform it overall. And so I think the Mind's Weakness, I would still consider the number one card. But when I take Phantasmal Killer, I'm thinking about using it in certain situations and swapping it out for the Mind's Weakness. And this is really how the Mindthief should have worked with its other augments, is, you know, flexibility and swapping them in and out for different situations. Unfortunately, the other augments are too weak to compete with the Mind's Weakness, but Phantasmal Killer, you will definitely be like, all right, Mind's Weakness is going. I'm about to, you know, on this 22 hit point reg, and that feels really good. So you'll go back and forth between them. And when you're not using this this augment for the top, you're going to use it for this great bottom. Move to Loot 1, Invisible Self, Empower Dark. It's Into the Night. It's the entire Into the Night card. Plus move. So you can guess what we're going to remove. We're going to remove Into the Night because Phantasmal Killer is just Into the Night plus, and it's got that great top. All right, let's talk some playing strategy. 1, use your initiative to manipulate the battlefield. Go quick and stun so monsters can't attack. Go slow so that you can go in afterwards and hit monsters, and then go fast next turn, hit them and run away. Go in and out of melee range and use a combination of tactics with initiative to make sure that you're not being targeted. That's your goal as the Mindthief. To be in there, right, and not actually get hit. It's actually a really fun playstyle, fairly punishing for new players, but make sure you're, you know, going invisible. I would suggest you take the Cloak of Invisibility at Prosperity level 1, and of course a minor stam potion. Very, very useful stuff for you so that you can, between Into the Night and Cloak of Invisibility, you could get 4 turns of invisibility. This is going to be really useful for you, you know, making sure that you don't die when you get in there. So always be thinking about how you can essentially hit and run or get in close and use your crowd control. So the next part, and it's, you know, part of that, the next piece is using crowd control. The Mindthief at level 1 has amazing crowd control. You can, you know, stun, you can immobilize. You can immobilize at level 1 and level 2 with 2 different cards. And at level 2, like I was talking about, there's that nice loop, right? You Perverse Edge and you stun. The next turn you use Frigid Apparition and you stun. Then you stam potion Frigid Apparition back and you play Hostile Takeover the next turn. That's more crowd control. And now you've empowered ice again. And then you play Frigid Apparition again. You can do that all in the same rest cycle. So loop that kind of stuff together in combination with going fast and going slow. And you're really going to be able to manipulate the battlefield and make sure that, you know, this guy's stunned, you're too far away from this guy so he won't target you. You've got this melee monster immobilized over here. And then, you know, next turn you're going to go invisible so you're not targeted. And then you're going to go late so that you don't get targeted the following turn. And you're going to come out of your invisibility and smack somebody. And then you're going to go fast again right away so that you've had all these turns of, you know, crowd control and damage and not getting hit. That is the key. Don't get hit with the Mindthief. Don't play the Mindthief like, I don't want to say a tank because it's not playing it like a tank, but don't go in with the mindset of, I'm going to try and get all items to protect myself because the Mindthief is so squishy. Don't go and get hide armor. Don't go get leather armor. Stuff like that. This is all Prosperity 1 stuff. I won't spoil any of the later Prosperity levels. Go and use items that are going to help you crowd control more. Like you could get a Warhammer to stun, although I don't actually recommend that. Just, I don't want to spoil things, so I'm using that as an example. But adding extra crowd control, adding extra move, adding, you know, stuff like that is going to be much more useful than, you know, a heater shield and trying to block 1 damage. You just want to float around and not get hit. And then you want to make sure and play the Mind's Weakness as early as you can. It can be really easy to get caught in a trap of, well, the monsters are rushing me, I'm going to do something else first, because if I play the Mind's Weakness the first turn, it's not going to be a super effective turn. You need to get it out as soon as possible and start adding up that damage, because over the course of a scenario, that damage adds up to quite a bit, and you end up killing monsters earlier, and you make the whole scenario easier for yourself. And that's pretty much it. Just always remember, don't get hit. Sounds easier than it is, but using these strategies and these card picks, you should have a pretty good start on that. All right, let's talk perks. But if you're liking the video, I appreciate it if you hit that like button. It helps the YouTube algorithm and it helps me out a lot. First, you're going to remove -1s. They ruin lives. Then you're going to remove your -2 and replace it with a +0. Remove your 4 +0s. And now that you've thinned your deck, you're going to add the +2 ice just to ensure you have ice up every turn for the rest of your life permanently. So much ice generation here. And then you're going to replace the +1s with the +2s. And then you're going to ignore negative scenario effects. And after that, I mean, you're going to be really high level. You're going to be doing your own thing. I would just recommend not taking rolling modifiers for the most part. They cause problems. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching the video, and a special thank you to my subscribers and my patrons. I couldn't do it without you.